feel like a good one, mate?
Yeah, it feels okay. It's trying to do me on the back of that bar at the moment. You see all
it's
that milky
kicked up a
water kicked
huge
up.
cloud, yeah.
It's certainly pulling well. Funny bite, it just a couple of little bleeps. I put the other rod down. I was just about to cast the other rod out, put the other rod down, looked at the rod and I thought, no, just a liner. I thought, well, that's encouraging. It's been quite quiet, that rod, and then it pulled up about a couple of inches, and then I was watching the slack line at the tip, and it just slowly went, slowly.
So you fished this on a lead to come off?
Yeah, that's definitely, that's correct. Yeah,
so
no, I'm really...
fish safety and this amount of weed paramount, would you say?
Yeah, there's not loads and loads of weed, but why risk it, you know? It's much better for the fish. You increase your chances of landing the fish dramatically. Since I started fishing with drop-off leads, and a lot of the waters I fish are quite weedy. Since I've been fishing with drop-off leads, the number of fish you land to lost is greatly improved. And of course, a lost fish, particularly if it's got tackle in it, is going to get damaged. Much better for me, much better for the fish to get that hook out, isn't it?
Everyone's a winner,
yeah.
Absolutely. That's a good fish, that side.
Thanks for that, Adam. Yeah.
Lovely scaly one, look at that.
It is quite scaly. Let's just not talk about it too much.
Oh, he's really big as well, look at him.
Oh, shut up, Adam.
Saw a 40-pounder under that bush.
Yeah, but you said it was all plain and no scales. This is definitely scaly.
Oh yes, I'll keep him coming, mate. All the way, all the way. He's yours. Hey, what a perler of a fish. Mate, that is the showstopper. Well done.
Oh, God,
awesome.
my arm. That was a good fight.
Right, guys, we've got the fish in the net. Now, carp care and how to handle fish is of paramount importance. We're going to show you exactly how to do that correctly next. Simon has got an absolute corker of a fish to show you. Wait till you see this is a real showstopper, isn't it?
Yeah,
So
it's a proper St John's carp.
Now, one of the key things is keeping a fish in as pristine a nick as it was when it was caught. So we're going to take you through the procedure of getting the fish out of the water safely, transferring it to the mat, and how to treat it accordingly. So first of all, Si, I mean, you're an experienced angler. I guess you would probably...
I think the sort of fish care side is hugely important to the anglers, and it starts from the moment that fish is in the net, really.
Absolutely.
And the first thing, this is a gravel pit. You've got gravelly slopes. A lot of anglers go, you know, wearing skate shoes, whatever, trainers. Boots, chesties, I think are essential. You know, you don't want to be dragging this fish to there to lift it out. So come to the fish.
Absolutely.
Don't drag it up over the gravel. Make sure it's you know, fully supported by the water. It's not listing over on that. You know, if it catches itself on these rocks, it'd be a disaster.
Yeah.
So first thing is get out to the fish, and then what we need to do before we lift it out of the water is make sure it's folded flat in this net, and then what we're also going to do, something that you guys at Korda are really keen to get people doing, is to get this fish and the net into the sling and carry it to the unhooking mat. So
because you and I, we're great believers of that. Damage to fish does happen or can happen when fish are lifted in net mesh.
Yeah, absolutely. If this fish was sitting funny in the landing net and I lifted it clean out of the water now, if it was a peck, its peck could be broken by being bent round or snapped. I've seen tails that have snapped straight off because people haven't had the fish lying flat in the net. It's folded, so as they take the weight of the fish, it just breaks the tail. And also another thing that can easily happen is the rig gets caught in the material of the mesh. You go to lift it and the hook just rips straight out. Really important at this stage to make sure the fish is sat in the bottom of the net, it's nice and straight, the tail's not folded round and the fins are flat.
Just leading on from that, guys, as Simon said, critically important to keep the pressure on the mouth, or to make sure there's absolutely no pressure on the mouth. And one of the most common things that we see people doing is breaking down the net and rolling everything up together, and the line is rolled up with the net arms, which means it's tight all the way through to the rig. You lift the fish and it tears, and that's a common mistake, isn't it, Si? So
really important.
I mean, you're experienced enough to unhook the fish in the water occasionally. You're going to do that now, or
we'll have a look. If I'm not happy that I can't easily get to the hook, I'd leave it in.
Okay.
Because I think if the fish is a bit lively and it's kicking in the net, you can end up with a size 6 in your finger. But if you can easily pop the hook out while it's in the net, then it's out the way.
Yeah.
And I think
out the way
just
good, isn't it?
Last little point on that is, if you unhook this fish now and go, right, there's my rig, drop it in the water, the first swan that comes past is going to pick it up. So really important to make sure if you do unhook it and it's still got bait on, to get it up on one of the rings out the way so that you and the wildlife don't get hooked up.
Absolutely, good point. Well, shall I hold the net while you can try and pop the hook out?
Okay, let's have a little look. Let's come out easy.
Oh, brilliant, excellent. So rig out the way, I'll hook that into the rod like you said. You got the net?
Yeah, fantastic.
There you go, mate.
Thank you.
Now Simon's just checking the fins are nice and flat against the fish's body. It's safely in the soft sling. There's no mesh that's under tension that could tear or do any damage at all. So if you can get down to the water, whenever you land a fish, good practice, get it out with the sling, not with the net mesh. Okay, the fish is onto a nice big fully padded mat. Let's have a look at what you caught, Simon. I know it's a bit special, this carp.
Sneaky preview in the landing net. Oh, look at those scales.
Oh yeah, I want one of those.
Proper.
Oh yes.
Cracking fish.
Again, always easy if there's
Massive
two
great.
of you guys, but huge great mouth, immaculate carp. If you want to lift him up, we'll get the mesh out of the way and drop him straight in the sling. Obviously not drop him. Sling's already zeroed, guys. That's good, you know, just make sure you're well organised. We've got a weighing crook.
Well, Adam, you are the best judge of fish weights of any man I've ever met. What do you reckon?
That's a compliment. Oh, you're putting me on the spot now. I reckon he's about 22 and a half.
That'll do me.
What do you think?
That'll be fine. I'm happy with anything, as ever.
I'm better at judging them in the water than on the bank. You pressured me there. Right. Well, there you go. A bit bigger than we thought. I hadn't felt the weight of him. He's a lot bigger than I thought. 28 pounds on the nose. Simon, you're made up with that. Brilliant. Absolutely excellent.
Days. Fantastic.
Well, you can see we're both excited over this. A very special carp indeed.
So we're just going to have a look at its mouth. There was a little mark where my hook was in there, Adam. So I'm just going to put a little bit of the old Carp care kit on there. And then here you've got the 2 bottles and the cotton buds. We've got the mouth and the body. Obviously we want the mouth, so we'll just click that out. And we're just going to put a little bit on that mark where the hook was. But that's very clean mouth anyway. That's excellent fish.
And there's no, guys, if you've got a treatment like that, always look at the body. You know, if it's got a lifted scale or any kind of blemish, really, you can treat it with the body ointment and keep these carp as pristine as this. I mean,
it's a great looking fish.
Couldn't have a better example, could you, Simon?
That's a belt, isn't it? That's
Again,
good
another
old
key
stuff.
thing while your fish is on the mat is to keep it nice and wet. You see some people holding a bottle right low over the fish. Fish kicks, hits the bottle, so give it a bit of space.
Yeah.
There
And
we go.
it's always worth putting your hand over its eyes as well, Adam. You know,
Yes.
it's one thing you see on the fish farm, the darker they are, the quieter they are. So.
Good tip, excellent tip.
I'm not a great fan of the old stick your thumb in the mouth. That's a bit old school.
Well, let's hold him up and see what you've got there, mate. I'm very envious.
Oh, a cracker.
Well done. And that is how to safely handle a carp on the bank, from netting it all the way through. We're going to return this fella after we've done a couple of still photographs.
Do you know what's happened, mate? You're on your garage floor, your gear's been nicked, so you've had a heart attack, you're clearly dying.
Hey, do you know what, Al?
You should have got covered.
The swim I'm fishing in this session is actually quite weedy, and although I've been fishing to clear gravel margins with my left and middle rod, my right hand rod I've been fishing with PVA bags, solid bags. And what I want to do now is just run through quickly the rig that I use and the way I've been fishing those bags. So I've got some dark matter tubing, this is weedy green, and I've got about 18 inches of that on there, a tail rubber, and then I've got a flat inline pair. Now this is the significant bit. As I've mentioned already, I'm really keen on getting shot of that lead. So this is a drop-off system. So the way I'm setting it up is I've got a tail rubber on the end of my tungsten tubing. I push the tail of the flat inline pair into that tail rubber. Nice and wet first, slide it in there. And then I've got a size 11 ring swivel, which I put a cut down tail rubber on the end, and I push that neatly into the front end of that flat inline pair, and then I pull the line tight. And that forms an absolutely fantastic drop-off system. Get a fish on there, it pops out, and the lead drops off. Now it's really easy to fish that in a solid bag. So what I do now is just run through that setup. But before I do, I'll just show you the actual rig setup. I've got a link clip, a short length of supernatural hook link. That is then tied to a trusty size 6 wide gape and a little bit of shrink tube on the eye just to kick it round. And then I've got a fish meal boilie, which is actually a critically balanced fish meal boilie, and I've trimmed that down, and that's what I'm going to fish inside my bag. So a really tidy little bag setup, and the beauty of it is you get a fish on, the lead's gone. So once again, you're playing a fish without the complication of having a lead hanging about. So I'm going to use a small solid bag. Here we go. So the first job is to get it opened up. I like to mix the pellets up that I'm going to fish in my bag. So I'll start off with some of these small sturgeon pellets, which are commercially available for the ornamental trade. You could use a little carp pellet or a little trout pellet, and then I'm going to add my hook link. Now obviously this bit can be a bit fiddly and it takes a bit of practice. I'm not a brilliant PVA bag fisherman myself, but I've got friends that can tie these up incredibly tidy and very quickly, but it's not that tricky, and once you practice it a little bit you can kind of get the hang of it. So the trick is to get that hook bait right down into one of the corners, and then you need the hook to be lying away from that. Now the setup I'm going to do effectively will end up with the lead in there, the hook link wrapped round like it's shown there, and the lead. Just then add a few pellets, and really you can add pretty much anything to this. I feel like I'm doing a cooking program now. You know, I put a few pellets in, but if you've got a particular pellet combination that you're really keen to use, I think it's important to mix the size of the pellets up. If fish are just picking up one size pellet, then possibly they become a little bit conditioned to that. The other thing with those little sturgeon pellets is they're a little bit different. Not many people, I don't see many people using them. So by being a bit different, that might give you a little bit of an edge. And you can see that I'm slowly filling the bag up. I'm holding the lead and the tail rubber right at the top of the bag, and that's where I'm going to wrap it around as we fill. So a few more of the little sturgeon pellets in there. So it starts to get a bit filly when you're trying to get it in there. These little filling scoops that come with the solid bags make a big difference. They're really useful actually. Really help you to get the rig in there properly. Try and pack that pellet in nice and tight. And the beauty of having the small pellets in there is they leave very little air space. They pack in nice and tight. A few more pellets that side. And work them round that lead, so you're getting a nice tidy parcel. And you can sort of see it starting to take shape now. So hook baits down here, rigs snaking back and forth, top end of that lead, a little bit more pellet, and then we'll tie it off. In my experience, carp absolutely love trout pellets, salmon pellets, halibut pellets, and any of these could be used in this little setup. And the beauty of this is you could cast this into the thickest weed bed and still have a pretty good chance of hooking a fish. And mark my word, any carp worth its salt will find this when it's buried in the middle of a weed bed, because it'll give off a hell of a lot of smell. You can pull that neck of the bag nice and tight and then twist it round. And you can see you're forming the bag beautifully there, and the lead's right in the middle. Now what I tend to do at this stage, give my fingers a bit of a wet. Not too much, otherwise obviously the bag starts to break down. Give it a nice turn and just hold that for a second. You can see that's a really solid bag, and you can imagine that bombing down into the weed. Now just to finish it off, a bit more moisture on that neck, just tighten it up nice and tight. If you're going for a big distance cast at this stage, you can start folding the corners around as well. I'm not going to. So there's pretty much my finished bag. Now what I want to do for a little bit of extra security is I've got some quick melt solid PVA tape here. And what I'm going to do is pull a little bit of that off. And just for added security on the cast really, wrap that round there a couple of times. Pull it tight. And knot the top of the bag. Not always necessary, but I tend to be a bit of a negative person when it comes to my PVA bag fishing, so I think it's quite good to get a little bit of extra security on there. Get rid of those ends. Seal it all off. Lovely job. How tidy is that? Now you imagine casting that into a thick weed bed. The bag's going to go punching in, find its way to the bottom very quickly. It'll then start to break down. You've got the tubing behind, the tungsten dark matter tubing behind it, so everything's nicely camouflaged. That'll land in amongst the weed or on the bed of the lake, start to break down. Now there's hundreds and hundreds of those little pellets in there, and maybe 100 of the bigger pellets in there. They're all breaking down, giving off loads of smell up into the water column, and carp will home in on that from a great distance away. So it's a very effective setup. You can see that a solid bag setup like that is an absolutely fantastic way of catching carp. I've got friends that will use these wherever they go and pretty much nothing else. So if you're in doubt, feeling a bit unconfident with a weedy area in front of you, try a solid bag. What I'd like to do now is run through the rods, reels and bobbin setup that I'm using this morning. On this right-hand rod, I'm fishing a choddy, and I'm fishing a relatively slack line in that sort of choddy style. It's a naked choddy, and I've got the stove bobbin set with no extra weight, and the bobbin's quite sensitive. I've got the Delkim set on their sensitive setting, and you can see any little movement is giving me an indication. I've had a few fish this morning brush through the lines, and I'm getting a little trembling on there. So that's this right hand rod. The middle rod, I'm fishing across to the far tree line. Now, at that sort of distance, maybe 80 or 90 yards, it's more important to fish with your lines a bit tighter, or I reckon. So I've got the extra weight on the stow bobbin, and I'm fishing with that quite tight. And what I've had in the last couple of days, the bites on this rod, rather than being screamers, have actually, the fish have come back towards me, and so I'm getting a drop on the bobbin. So I fish it fairly tight. If the fish pulls up, you get a good indication, but if it comes back towards you, it drops. And as I say, I've had the couple of bites I've had on this rod yesterday, they've been drop backs. On the left-hand rod, which is my banker at the moment, I'm fishing about 50 yards across to the margins over the far bank. I've got the stow bobbin set with no extra weight, and it's a sort of a hybrid between the two positions. It's neither at the top or right down. And what I'm finding on there, I've had some fish that are running away from me up the margin. They're pulling up tight like that, and those other fish are coming back this way, and the bobbin drops. So I have that set midway. All three of the Delkims are set today, the wind down, so I've got them on sensitive settings. Particularly on this rod, I've got the stow bars, and they're great use on here because I'm fishing across to my left. If I get a really angry take, that rod's pulling about a bit, and these just give me the extra security that I know the rod's not going to bounce off the rest. So that's the stow bars. The rods and reels I'm using for this session are Daiwa Infinity 3 3/4 pound test curve rods. I bought these 3 or 4 years back for a spot I was fishing where I was casting quite a long way. I'm no big caster, as you guys will all know, but I reckon the fish were about 130 yards out, so I bought these rods on the recommendation from the guys at Korda, and I loved them, and now I'm using them for just about all of my fishing. They're so versatile. A couple of weeks ago, I was stalking in the blue pool, I was using these, never had a hook pull, 15 or so fish out. I've been using them here. You can cast bags, you can cast choddies, so brilliant rods from that respect. You can cast anything you put on the end. The other thing I really like about them, in this sort of weedy water, you've got a little bit extra pressure on the fish. You wind down on a 2 3/4 pound test curve rod on a weeded fish, and you put a massive bend in your rod and you're likely to break it. And if you're trying to cast with a 2 3/4 ounce rod and you've got a big bag, you're also putting too much strain on the rod. So these rods are perfect for that. The reels, these are Daiwa Entos, and I've loaded them up with the 20-pound subline. Setup I've got now 100% confidence in, so well worth giving this stuff a go.
Well, now that is a bruiser of a male mirror carp. Absolutely beat me up. Huge pecs, massive tail, epic scrap, about 20 minutes, most of it on the surface. Yeah, just absolutely blown away with this. I'm going to show you next how I've got my rods set up and why I've got them set up that way for this style of fishing. Now you'll notice straight away that my rod tips are really high. And what I've got is a candy floss blanket type weed bed running out 30 yards probably, and in places it comes to within a couple of feet of the surface, especially in close. Now it'd be absolutely pointless using a back lead or getting my tips down or trying to get the line really low running through the weed, because it would just clog up on the bite, it would be in the tip ring, it would just be a disaster. So to combat that, what I've decided to do is put my tips right up nice and high. When I've made the cast, I sink the line. As I said, I'm using 20-pound subline, sinks quite quickly, the V's meet. As soon as it's under the surface, I will keep paying out line before I put the indicator on. That's very important. Never be in a rush to get your indicator on. I want that line nice and slack, draped over the top of the weed. Now that's important for two reasons. One, obviously I don't want to spook the fish that are coming through, but also when I hook a fish, I don't want to be wiping out my lines, because I can't back lead or get my lines down any lower than where the actual weed is. So when I've hooked a fish, I've not had any lines wiped out, even the lines that are held high in the water by the weed. So I think that's testament to the fact that they're as low as they can be against the weed. When a fish hooks itself, it's rising in the water and it's hitting this high rod tip. Now that compression helps to set the hook, which alleviates hook pulls, but it's also one of the reasons I do it. A lot of people ask why I fish like this sometimes. I like to have my tips up high simply because it's exciting. You know, you get a bite like that, it really is, it's very exciting, and that's what carp fishing is supposed to be. Now, when the fish hits that tip, the line's obviously tight, coming through down to the bite alarm. It's not going to be able to take much line straight away, because when you're fishing in weed, guys, you've got to have a tight clutch. If you're in your bivvy 10 yards back, If the fish is going and it's taking 10, 15, 20 yards of line, sometimes you probably all heard it yourselves, you hear that bite alarm going in the middle of the night and it's on. If you're not on that rod quickly, the further that fish goes through weed, the less chance you've got of landing it. So the clutches on my baisiers are screwed up pretty tight. I'll show you that in just a moment. As we come down the rod here, you see I've got 3 Delkims set up on single sticks. Each one's got stow bars. If I was fishing left or right, that would give me extra stability, but I'm fishing straight out here, so it's not a major drama. The Delkims are set to fairly high sensitivity. We've got really no wind or anything, there's no problems. Got a big drape of line, like I said. Coming through here to the stows themselves, I mean, we're all using these now, absolutely amazing sensitivity. They drop off the line on the bite, just an absolutely fantastic all-round indication system, because you can add the overweights for distance fishing, or like this at the other end of the scale, you can take all of the weight off completely. The small weight that comes on there I've taken off because I don't want or need any weight on these lines at all. That's partly because I don't want fish hitting my lines, but it's also because when you're fishing a choddy on leg core or on the line, particularly on the line, it's absolutely imperative that you have got no tension in that line at all, because it will lift your rig up and you'll have no presentation whatsoever. Really, really important, that, guys. So mega slack line for that reason as well. So it's coming through to the stow. I mean, a lot of people ask how to set these and get them exactly right. I like to use them in conjunction with a line clip, which I've got on all 3 rods. And when I clip them on, as I said, I'll make the cast and I'll pay the line out and I'll get it down nice, and so it's hanging straight off the rod tip like that. And then before I even think about putting this on, I'll leave it out for quite some time, let it settle, keep paying off line until you've got it as low as you can. I can't get it, as I said, that low in this situation, but as low as until it doesn't sink down anymore. Then I'll put the line in the clip and clip on the stow, and to adjust where your stow sits, it's a lot easier, guys, just to pull the line through the stow like that, rather than keep re-clipping it, and you can get it sitting exactly how you want it. Coming down through to the rod and the reel, my old trusty DFs, 3 1/4, black baisiers, and 20-pound subline is loaded onto those. I don't want to be losing any tackle or fish, so I fish strong and safe in weed. They're big fish here as well. That's my setup. I've got single sticks with Signet butt rests at the back end there. Everything's neat, everything's tidy, it's strong. It's fantastic when you get a bite, but it works well for practical reasons too. Got a very, very special fish here indeed, guys. Something that I've craved for since I first ever started fishing day ticket waters. It's a 40-pound carp. Not only that, it's a 40-pound common carp. Difficult to sum up what that means to me, really. It's very, very special. You know, you see a lot of big fish around from exclusive syndicates and private ponds and so on, but this is from a day ticket water where any of you guys watching can come and fish for. It's just an amazing carp. It's very long. It's been in the sack a couple of hours. It's going to probably be a little bit lively. We found some very deep water that we've just had it in, so we could show you. We'll show you how we get it out. Same practice as always. We're lifting the fish, whether it's in the net or a sack, we're carrying them in the slings so that they're totally protected and can't get damaged. We'll get him out and see what he looks like. I think he's going to be a showstopper. So there you go, guys. We're just easing the fish is in the sack, and we're just going to put him in this sling. Same as if we had a fish in the net like we showed you previously. If they're in the net and you put them in this and you collapse the net, then they can't damage themselves when you lift that net. It's very good angling practice. Everything's inside there, cord, fish, sack, fin. Simon's just checking the fins are folded nice and flat, not backwards or standing out. The fish is laying comfortable in the bottom of the sling. I'm going to zip the fella up. Simon's stronger than me, I'm going to pass it up to him, so if you want to get on that slope.
I'll carry it to the swim.
You all right?
Yeah. Okay.
Can't say too much about this really. An English day ticket, 40-pound common. Absolutely the stuff of dreams. Incredibly long. This fish was one I used to try and catch 15 years ago. It's called the original big common. I never caught him, and he's got a lot bigger since. Immaculate fish. He was caught from the weedy side of the swim where it's really thick weed, and I caught him on the weed safe chod rig, which I'll show you again later. Not much I can say about this guy really.
Look at the width across the back. Spectacular.
Well, I don't want to jinx myself, but it's been 19 bites and 19 fish on the bank, so that's testament to fishing strong and fishing safe. Thick line, size 6 choddies, and I've had them all feeding on the new grains from mainline, which is obviously working rather well. It's a big old fish, so I'm going to get it back in the water now, but totally and utterly blown away with this. Fish of my dreams.
This is the AQUA Endura range of luggage. It's the stuff I'm using for 99% of my fishing at the moment. First of all, rucksack. I never thought I'd use a rucksack again, but now this goes on my back, and when I'm pushing the trolley, it just makes the trolley that little bit lighter. And also, if I'm going to fish just for the day, it'll go on my back. Loads of stuff goes in there. I can use one of the rod bags in the chair, and I'm fishing. So to show you what goes in here, obviously rig safe, great big rig box, cameras underneath there and everything as well. Then all my buzzers and stuff go in the front pocket there, and then the side pockets is a modular system, so it means all the small bits bags all fit in the side pockets as well. And then you've got a nice flap that comes over the top with another pocket on there, so it's really up to you how you use that one. And then this is the medium sized cool bag. I've used this one as a hook baits bag, so you see I've got my corky ball pop-ups in there, bit of plastic corn as well, my funnel web, crusher, all that sort of stuff. You get loads of different pop-ups and what have you in there, and you could use it as a food bag as well. And then this is my latest addition to the range. This is the small carry-all, and you can see there the medium-sized bits bags go into those side pockets perfectly. And basically I very rarely do I zip them up, I just keep them in there all the time, and if I want to get to that, it comes out really easily. All my cooking stuff and all my food and everything's in there, all made for the Endura material. It's a lovely colour as well, very hard wearing and definitely thought about. And then the last thing, this has really been great for my fishing. This tri-star rod bag takes 3 rods made up. I put a net on the outside, and I take 2 of these with me when I'm fishing. So this one's for my spod, my marker and my floater rod, and then I've got another one for my free fishing rods. And because I swap between 3 1/4 rods or 3 3/4 rods, I just grab whatever one I need, take the net off it, put it onto the other one, and then take it fishing. So extremely well made stuff. Let's have a look at the bivvy I'm using. This is the Carbon Compact from AQUA. It's the bivvy I'm using in the UK at the moment. Weighs absolutely nothing because the poles are made from carbon and goes up in seconds. There's only 2 joins to the poles, so they go together, tensioning strap goes on, 4 pegs in the back and then 2 in the front, and it's basically up. And you get the frame support system with it as well that keeps it all nice and tight and away from your head when you're sitting inside it. When I first put this up a year ago, I never thought I'd fish under it. I thought it was too small. But it's amazing how all your gear goes in the back of it, and then the bed chair goes in next, and there's still a nice amount of coverage because you've got that nice peak on the front of it as well, and you've got a vent to it, so on a hot day like today you can roll the back up and it just lets the air come through, and it reduces the temperature inside the bivvy quite considerably. You can see here I'm fishing without the zip on front, which I only put on if it's real savage conditions. Other than that, it just gets rolled up and stored in my barrow. I've fished in some really bad conditions already with the wind blowing in, the rain coming in, and your bed chair's still not getting wet. So if you're looking to be mobile, you want everything to weigh absolutely nothing and go up in seconds, this is the one for you. This is the first time that I've fished Manor Farm for probably 10 or 15 years, and it's completely changed since the last time I was over here. So it's very important that I chuck the marker float out to start off with and find out what the swim's like. It's no point just casting 3 rods out there, not having a clue what you're really landing on, and then finding you waste 2 or 3 days because you're in the wrong spot. So I've cast the float out quite a few times, to be honest, more than I'd want to, but it's really important at the start of a long session to make sure you're dropping in the right area. So this is the setup that I use. So I've got a drop zone marker float on there, very, very buoyant. That's really important, so it comes up even when it's weedy. Flies really true that, so it goes a real long way. And then I've got a high vis vane on the top. That's really important. Some of the marker floats you'll get will have a much smaller vane on. You get them a long way out, find a really good spot, and then you can't see them. And that can be unscrewed, and I can change that for any other colours. You can get black ones and really bright yellow ones as well. Black one's really good if it's really bright, and the yellow one's really good if you've got dull conditions or it's just getting dark. And then moving down the float, I've got the bead that comes in the kit with the rest of it, and then the stem as well. Obviously that gets slid on first. It's got a great big ring on the top there that lets the line move through really easily, so it will come up even when you've got weed out there on the bottom. And then that stem is going to sit exactly like that on the bottom, so you've got a buoyant bit of foam there. Even when it's slack, it's going to sit up like that. And then the only thing I've added to this that doesn't come in the kit is that little fella there. That's a helicopter sleeve, and that just neatens everything up, stops the lead wobbling about in flight. I've had a good cast round, felt the lead hit the bottom, and it feels like the weed's slightly deeper in some places than others. So I'm just casting around until I felt a better thud. There's nowhere clear. When I pull back, you can't pull back at all. It just gets clogged up in weed straight away. So I'm just casting around, feeling it down, and then when I got it where I wanted it, I got a fishing rod and cast that out as well, just with a lead on it. And again, just felt that lead hit the bottom a few times around the float and just made sure everything was presentable on the bottom. I've probably got about that much weed, I reckon. The float's coming up reasonably easily, even with that stem on. And I've got a hook link, probably 10 inches to combat that. I should get loads of bites out there. And then moving on to the rod, this is brand new as well. This is a longbow spod and marker, so I'm using it for the marker in this situation. You could use it for a spod rod as well, but when you're fishing with a marker rod, it's really important that you've got a high test curve and it's really stiff, because when that lead hits the bottom, the stiffer the rod, the more you're going to feel. I've got braided reel line on there as well, so if I am lucky enough to be able to pull back and feel a clear patch, the stiffer the rod, the more vibration you're going to feel down it. So this one is in the longbow range. It's built exactly the same as a longbow fishing rod, so we've got a lovely matte finish on it. Nice long slim slender handle on there as well. And then moving up to the rings, we've got a 50mm butt ring on there, down to a 40, 30, 25, 20 and a 16mm tip ring. So that's going to absolutely fly out there. And it's really important with your marker rod that it's stiffer than your fishing rods from a casting point of view as well, because if you've got the same rod as a marker rod or even a lighter rod, that's what a lot of people use, old rods that they don't fish with anymore, you can't get the float anything like as far as you can get the fishing rods, and then your fishing is limited to that distance. This, I can cast 150 yards with that float on there, absolutely no problem at all. So it means I can fish as far as I can with the fishing rods with the marker rod. Really important, that. And then moving down to the reel, a little bit extravagant for a marker reel. This is a Basia, but again, it's going to cast an extremely long way, certainly as far as I need to cast a rig. Loaded up with floating braid on there as well. And very importantly, I've got a 50-pound armour cord leader. Now, the reason for that is it will stop the whole thing tangling on the way out there. Because you've got such a large ring on the top of that stem, the float will pull through it and the whole lot can start to tangle on the cast. So by having a big braided leader on there, a thick braided leader, it keeps the whole lot together on the cast and it doesn't tangle. And the beauty of these as well is they're the same number of turns virtually as my fishing reels. So that's 105 turns for 100 yards. I've measured that out. On the fishing reels, it's 107 turns for 100 yards. So if I'm 90 turns on this, roughly 90 turns on the rod as well, fishing rods, is going to be almost exactly the same distance. Now, in this situation, I haven't cast at the float to get the distance right. What I've done is walk the rods out, up the lane there, and got everything at exactly the same distance. And what that saves is loads of casting in the swim, trying to get everything bang on the money. So what I've basically done is wound the float down to the bottom when I'm happy with it out in the swim, put the line under the clip, and then wound it in quickly to get it away from all of the weed. And then I've walked it up the lane with a fishing rod, laid the two on the floor, and then put the float and the lead next to each other, walked back, clipped up the fishing rod, put a little tape marker on it as well, and then carefully wound it back in. But before I've done that, I've stuck a lead from the next rod in my pocket, and I've walked that one out as I'm winding back down to the first one. And make sure you wind the line really tightly through your fingertips so that it goes on nice and tight on the reel. And I always splash the reel before casting the fishing rod, because you can end up with a massive frap up if you don't do that. And I'd repeat it with each rod, and with the spot as well, so they're all dropping on the surface at exactly the same point. And then what I'm doing is flicking the spot back towards me, because the lead's going to drop towards me a little bit through that 8 feet of water that I'm fishing. So I've got a nice safe area for the fish to feed in behind the rigs and hopefully draw them in. It's only a few feet difference, and then bang, they're on the rigs and I should be getting bite. So that's how I'll feature find at the start of a session, especially when I don't know the swim. That's the kit that I use. Make sure you use a really stiff rod, floating braid, get a marker float set up that doesn't tangle, and make sure you're happy with the spot before you put the rods out. My spod mix for this kind of fishing could not be simpler. Very few ingredients, but first of all, let's have a look at the base ingredient, which is the hemp. And if I just let that run forward a bit there, you see how oily that is at the front. And what I've basically done is I've got a couple of tins of tuna. You can see all the bits of tuna there. Rather than just throwing it in there after I've mixed it all up, I've actually put it in there and reboiled it in the tuna in oil, so the whole lot has got even oilier than it is already. That's a mixture of chili hemp and salami's hemp, so it's got loads of flavour in it already, but that just boosts it even more, and that little bit of extra effort I think can get you a lot more bites. So a couple of jars of that in there, and then a couple of tins of good old-fashioned sweet corn in there. I'm fishing plastic hook baits over the top of this lot, so I want loads of grains of corn all rested in that weed out on the spot, so we'll give that a nice mix up there. At least two. You could probably get away with another one in there. You can see all the little flecks. You imagine a little corn hook bait sitting over the top of that lot, you just know it's going to go. So I'll probably put another tin in there as well in a second, but before that we just add our pellets, and that is the pellet mix. Basically it's a very, very small betaine pellet and then a 4mm very oily pellet, and I'm going to put a liberal amount of those in there. And this is the maximum sort of amount of mix I'd do up in one go, because these pellets are going to very quickly soak up all the goodness out the hemp, and the whole mix is going to go quite sticky quite quickly. And if you leave that overnight, it can end up sticking inside the spod and it takes forever to come out and can end up all over your swim. So just a few more. Let's have a look, see what the sort of inclusion rate is. Probably 60% hemp, 30% pellet, 10% corn at the moment, which is getting close to being right. A few more pellets in there, and that is it. No boilie in this one at all, because I'm fishing plastic over the top. We're going for economy this time, but still mega effectiveness. And I'm going to start probably with 20 to 30 spods over the area, and then I'm going to top it up with 3 or 4 spods, hopefully every time I get a bite. So that is the mix. Couldn't be simpler. This is my preferred spod rod and reel combination. Talking about the rod first of all, it's brand new from Daiwa. This is the Longbow DF spod rod, and this is the long range version. So there's a spod and marker that I've obviously got as my marker rod, and a spod as well. This is a little bit heavier than the other one, so it's going to cast that spod a little bit further. If you do a lot of spodding, this is the one for you. If you're new to it, then I'd say have the spod and marker as your spod rod and your marker rod, because it's ever so slightly softer and it's that little bit easier to cast. This is a real animal of a rod, snaps back straight really quickly, really fast recovery. And this came from a day we spent with one of the Japanese rod builders called Nori from Daiwa. We took him over to a lake, got a load of bites at long range, showed him what long range spodding was because he'd never seen it before, said what the rod needed to do, and he's come up with this one, and it is absolutely brilliant. Casts miles. I'm getting this one, this is going out 85 yards and it's hitting the clip about 30 yards in the air, so I can get a spot out with these probably 150 yards. So very, very fast recovery, 50mm butt ring, built exactly the same as all the other longbows, so really stylish. That is an absolutely brilliant rod for long range spodding. So moving down to the reel, the old faithful Daiwa spod reel. Got a really large line clip on it there to take all the sort of shock out of the cast. So you'll notice when I am casting, the rod will go up in the air, it'll hit the clip, and I'll lay that spod as gently as I can on the surface. And that's one of the tricks to spodding, not letting it plummet in and make loads of noise, just drop that spot on the surface. You imagine if you were just there in a boat and you were just sprinkling all the bait out by hand and making absolutely no splash. That's what you're trying to achieve when you're actually spodding. Now that's loaded up with AQUA tournament braid. That's 30-pound braid that's really, really thin. It's a floating braid, pure Dyneema, so it goes absolutely miles, but you do have to treat it with respect. So keep splashing the spool when you're spodding, keep it wet all the time, and you won't get any big frap ups coming up the rod, braid carnage as we call it. And that's attached to a 30-pound armour cord leader. Now that's so strong, that stuff, I don't need 50 pound on this rod to take out the force of the cast. 30 pound is more than enough, and that forms a really small knot. It's a 4-turn water knot, and you can't even hear that go through the rings. Then moving down to the spod itself, very proud of this one. I designed this quite a few years ago. This is the Skyliner spod. We've updated it a little bit in recent years and put those stiff tails on there that are specially moulded, so you just clip them in when you buy the spod. The thing that makes this so good, it's extremely lightweight. Weighs almost nothing with no bait in it at all. A very buoyant nose cone and great big holes on it as well. So when it hits the surface, it flushes the bait out very quickly. You'll notice I'm flicking it a few times, just dragging it along the surface, just getting that bait to come out of it as quickly as possible, flicking it up off the surface, and those stiff tails help get the back out of the water, and it just glides in along the surface. Now, if I wanted to go further, what I would do is slip that helicopter sleeve up there. I've got a thing called a ring clip, which is actually made for helicopter rigs on there, but that just allows me to take the spod on and off easily. And what I would do is move over to a Sky Raider, which is a little bit smaller, so it's a bit lighter when it's full of bait. It's more nose heavy, so it's tapered towards the back so it goes even further, and that's going to probably put another 20 yards on my spodding. So when this one starts to drop short, then I move over to the Sky Raider. And if I'm only spodding boilies, or I'm spodding maggots, or sloppy spod mix, if I'm spodding over zigs, I'll move over to the Sky Winder, because the holes are only at the very top of that spod. So the rest of it can be filled with liquid and you don't lose any on the cast. So that's a real good addition. If you do a lot of spodding, put one of those on the end and then cover it up with one of those helicopter sleeves. It's all nice and neat, and you can change from one spod to the other without having to break the line down. Now, in this situation, I put about 30 spodfuls out. There's a lot of fish in this lake, probably 500 carp or more. I'm told the area is really productive out there, so I put a fair bit of bait in to start off with, and then I'll probably put 3 or 4 out every time I get a bite, and just try and build that swim and build it and build it. And if you notice, when I'm casting, all my weight is on my back foot, and then it will transfer through my body, through the cast, onto my front foot at the end of the cast. So you're using your body weight to help the spod go out there. A lot of people, they're very cramped up. They don't hold the rod at the very base of the rod. Their hands are too close together. They're a little bit cramped up, and they don't cast very far. Make sure your arms are really extended. You lean back, all your weight's on the back foot, and through it goes nice and smoothly, and that will get a lot more distance. Make sure the spod's hanging down about half the length of the rod, roughly where the spigot is each time. Get it in the same place every time, and then back and then through. Really, really important. One other thing, just to show you here, I've got on my wrist, something that I take for granted that I could never cast without, is one of those. Reuben Heaton finger stall. You can see that's done some real miles, that one, but that takes away the force on your finger. So you've got a very thin braid there, a powerful rod. You're going to really feel that on your finger, and just putting one of those on will get you more distance. And when you're winding the spod in, don't fight with it. See a lot of people striking and striking. I just flick the braid up off the surface and then wind it in just a constant pace, and you find it won't keep dipping down under the surface. Then up to your hand, straight into the bucket, press it down with your thumb, the same drop on the rod, roughly opposite the spigot, and then whack it back out again, hit the clip and drop a bit more bait. And that is the key to spodding, is practice. So get it to go straight before you get it to go long. Use the right kit, make sure it's all nicely balanced. It's a great way to get loads of small items out in the swim, and on lakes like this, it can get you loads of bites.
The best line I've ever used, without any question at all, subline. Why? Because it does absolutely everything I need it to do. It sinks fantastically well, it casts extremely well, it knots extremely well. Everything you need from a line is right here. Whether it's on the bench test, we do a lot of those at Korda. We do knot test, abrasion test. This fella wins, beats everything else hands down. In a fishing situation, does absolutely everything I ask of it. For me, subline, the best line ever made.
My current favourite line is 20 pound subline brown. It's supple, very strong and fantastically abrasion resistant. It's great stuff. I've caught fish to over 30 pound this year in some snaggy, weedy waters. Caught lots and lots of upper 20s. Great stuff, well worth using.
We're going to talk hook baits now with part carp, part man, Simon Scott. So my first question is, do you ever use a hook bait straight out of the bag, just a standard bottom bait?
Absolutely, Dan, and yeah, definitely. I'm real confident with a bait straight out of the bag.
What sort of situation would you use it in?
If I was fishing over clean gravel, I want to bait hard on the bottom.
Right.
But you know, in silty lakes, a lot of the lakes I started my carp fishing on were very silty, and I'd use bait straight out of the bag and caught plenty of fish.
Right, okay. Now I noticed on here that you've been using quite a few tiger nuts as hook baits, and I noticed I've seen you in the edge, like dropping them in and seeing how slowly they sink. Now you're obviously doing something to them.
Yeah, that's right, Dan. As you say, I'm a massive fan of tigers, and I like my hook baits to sink steadily. I don't want them to be critically balanced. I don't want them fluttering about. If a fish comes in, I don't want it wafting the bait off the bottom, but I want to be able to take the weight of the hook out and make it very easy for the fish to suck it up off the bed of the lake.
So how is the hook sitting then? Is it flat on the bottom? Is it sitting up? Sort of
somewhere between the two.
Right.
If I can be perfect, you know, sometimes I will fish them sat upright, but it's normally just kicked over.
Right, okay. So you've basically taken the weight of the hook away,
Yeah.
but it's not so buoyant that it's going all over the place when the fish approach the swim.
Yeah, spot on.
to
It's
actually
definitely
feed.
not critically balanced.
Right, okay. So when would you do that as opposed to just using one straight out of the bag, just a standard bottom bait?
It's fishing situations. If I'm seeing fish come in and feeding and not getting a pick up on one that's been balanced, I might try a straight bottom bait. A lot of my fishing stalking, as you know, so you know I often see what's going on.
Right, okay. So if you can't see what's going on and you approach it, obviously over here, you know, you've not got the luxury of being able to watch the fish right under your feet, how long do you give it with one before you swap to another one?
My tactic there would be to chop and change and to start with different setups on different rods.
Right.
And if one rod starts doing the bites, then fine tune the others.
Right, okay. So a standard bottom bait on one, slow sinking bottom bait on the other.
And a pop up on the third rod.
Right, okay.
You know, chop and change.
Right. So with boilies, if you want to critically balance a boilie, how do you do that?
Unfortunately, the range I use, there is a fish meal in that range that is done with a cork dust mixed through it, so you can buy critically balanced
so
hook baits
little
in pots.
tiny bits of cork that actually rolled into the paste, so it's got like a rough sort of texture,
Spot
isn't
on.
it?
Yeah, and they just slowly sink, and
Right.
then you add the hook, and you've got slow sinking hook bait.
Right, okay. Now I've been doing that with my own paste and putting the cork dust into it, and it's actually you can keep moulding it in, dropping the whole lump in a thing of water, and you can see how easily it floats to the surface, and you want it so it's just coming up to the surface, and then you know it's going to be.
Yeah, by the time you've added the hook to that, you've got a nice steady sink on it, but it's not, the weight of the hook's taken out of the equation, isn't it?
Right, okay. So in percentage terms, what percentage of fish do you think you've caught on slow sinking bottom baits as opposed to standard bottom baits?
Oh, God, that's a tricky question.
Yeah,
half
but
and half, I suppose.
half and half?
Through my carp fishing, yeah. I'd say.
Right, okay. And I take it you try both on the same venue and then just see which one works.
Yeah, and the one thing, a good point at this stage to say, Dan, is that the fish's mood will change day to day. So what might work well one day might not work the next. So don't be afraid to change. If you've caught fish on pop-ups, then don't be afraid to try a bottom bait to see.
Right, okay. And what about the old faithful snowman? A lot of fish get caught on snowmen.
Massive.
Is that something you use?
Oh yeah, loads and loads. I'm a great fan of that. So standard bottom bait and then a cut down pop up on the top, and I'll trim it down again to get that slow sink effect.
Right, okay. So when I do mine, I cut a little bit off of each bait so they sort of join together a little bit nicer. Is that something you do as well?
Yeah, do that. Yeah, sort of sandwich the two halves together, trim them down.
Right, and what about colour? Does colour of hook bait make a difference, do you think?
Definitely, yeah. And I think there's situations where you want your bottom baits to blend in, hook baits to blend in with the bottom baits.
So what is that situation? So people.
Well, again, the mood of the fish on the day.
Right.
In the springtime, the fish are coming out of the cold water. Their eyesight deteriorates in cold water, so giving them a little bit of a target, a little bit of yellow on top of the boilie, it can be a great edge.
Right.
The flip side is at this time of the year, the fish have been pressured all summer long. They see a bit of yellow on top of oil, it's like, no way.
Right,
I'm not having that.
Right, now that's really interesting, that, because I've found that on the places I've fished, the bright ones have worked really well in the spring, but come the summer, it's not as easy to get a bite on a bright one, and you want a food bait, if you like, something similar to what you're feeding, and you get a lot more bites on that.
Yeah, definitely.
This is the Trident AS bivvy. I've used it for a number of years now and I absolutely love it. Goes up like all the other pram hood bivvies, so the ground sheet goes out first in the swim. That gives you the template to show you how big it's going to be. Then the bivvy goes out on top of it, and this one has only got 2 joins, so it goes up even quicker and it makes that lovely curved shape on it. So join those together, and then also the peak here is part of it. You don't have to thread the pole through as well. It can stay in it when it's packed away. That goes together and gets slotted in at the ends as well. Oh, little bleep on the right hand rod. Then the bivvy is clipped underneath the ground sheet to give it its shape, to give it its tension, and then you go round the back. There's 4 pegs at the back that need to go in, and you basically get the eyelet that's on the bottom of the ground sheet with the eyelet that's on the bivvy, put the 2 together, peg goes in, do those 4 and then come round to the front, and then just 1 peg at the front through the eyelet and the bivvy is up. And then if it's raining, you can start putting your gear inside. If it's not, obviously the extra pegs go in, and then these lovely spacer bars go in that come with the bivvy, and it just makes everything super, super rigid. That's not going to go anywhere, even in a storm. So to show you how I set everything up inside it, because people are interested in that, if we come inside the bivvy, what I basically do is put all my bags at the back of the bivvy. So I've got a compact barrow bag there. I've got a small size carry-all there for my food and all my cooking bits and pieces. I've got a rubbish bucket, one of the trakker camouflage buckets that I just keep all my rubbish in, because you do build up a load of stuff over the session. Clothing goes at the end of the bed chair. Obviously the bed chair's in, you can see you've got loads of room either end there for the bed chair. The old bed chair buddy goes on top of that. I wouldn't fish without that one. I don't bring a bivvy table with me anymore. Instead, the tackle box just goes on the bed chair at the end. That saves a bit of weight, and all the stuff I need to get to all the time goes in front of the bed chair, so I'm not reaching behind to get it all the time. And one brilliant little tip for you, my old trakker pillow, which you can see there has had loads of action, has got a memory foam pillow inside it. They are absolutely brilliant. Just get them in any bedding shop, you get a brilliant night's sleep with one of these. And then to move back outside the bivvy, just to talk to you about the other features, obviously I've got it completely open at the front. You get a lovely view of the lake with the front open like that, but you can zip on a full panel at the front, so you've got the door there as well, and you can zip on a mozzie panel. They both come with it. You can fish with both of them zipped on and swap between the 2, or just have one or the other. Or like I say, in this situation, I've got the wind behind me, I've got it all open, and it's a beautiful view of the lake. And I know sometimes you'll see me fishing in the UK with the carbon compact from AQUA because it's so small and light, and sometimes in France you'll see me with a 2-man Armo because they're much bigger and even more comfortable. But if I had to have one bivvy, it'd be the Trident AS. Something to think about for all you young anglers out there and the mums and dads watching. Kids nowadays have got just as expensive tackle as the adults have. We do Carp Academy every year where we take the kids away for a couple of days. The lad I was fishing with, Benedict, had infinities, top of the range Daiwa reels, Delkims. It's all very nickable. If you've got cover, it doesn't matter if you wake up in the morning and it's all disappeared. You can replace it all without any expense to yourself. If the kids get challenged and they've got the cover, they can just let them take it. At the end of the day, the tackle's replaceable, they're not. Something to seriously think about. Give them a call, get a quote. It'll probably be cheaper than you think.
Right, time to show you some of this awesome rod luggage from Trakker. First stop is this brilliant new quiver they've got in the range. One thing I like is a new addition, it's the elasticated tops. Now the thing I hate about quivers is everything rattles around, your rods get smashed up, but with these elasticated rod tops, it keeps everything aligned and straight and sturdy, and most importantly, your rod tips are safe. Moving down, you've got a lovely padded strap here, again, securing it against the blank, you're not getting damage. And then right down to here, again, they've got beautiful little tubes in here so it keeps everything sturdy, and they're protectors. So when you're walking around, if someone stands on your rod bag, that's protecting the blank. Very, very important. Let's turn it around. Onto this side, you've got loads of external pockets. This one can take your bank sticks. Moving up, I've got a throwing stick in this one, but if you've got short landing nets, you can put them in there also. And then a landing net in the main central pocket. And then how about this little clever addition? What I hate about rod bags is the old lead bouncing around, hitting the blanks, walking around, they're rattling, lines are getting tangled up. Well, you'll get none of this with this because you can just take it straight off the lead clip and you can put your leads in this handy little pouch. So let's move over to some of the other awesome items of kit they've got. These are the padded sleeves, and I've been using these now for over a year, and I absolutely love them. I'll explain why. Let me open it up. How about this for luxury padded sleeves? This just totally protects all that sacred tackle that you've got. This is the free rod version, so I carry this for my sort of SS 2600s and my light longbow rods for my short session fishing. This one is the 12-foot 5-rod version. It's got my brilliant little ISOs in there with my 3 1/4 pound test curve infinities. Again, it's awesome levels of padding. That's the difference. You've got 4,000 pounds worth of kit being carried around. The last thing you want is your luggage to aid damaging them. This way, you're protecting them. And let me just show you some of the external pockets on these. On this one, I've got the sling. Again, a landing net in there, throwing stick. And you can put your bank sticks in there also. They're just wonderful bits of kit. There's also a 13-foot version in the range now, so Danny will be well made up. You can get his brand new 13-foot Infinity DFs in there also. In my opinion, these are some of the best rod padded sleeves on the market. Right, time for some tracker luggage. Here I've got the barrow bag. I'm going to take you through it and show you exactly how much space there is, and also a few new bits that they've got in the range. So firstly, the new bits, like I said, these are the lovely new bits bags that they've got. Have a look at that lovely little design feature with the nets. If I open them up, you can fit odds and sods in there. They're perfect. And I tell you what, if you're going for a short session, for a spot of stalking, they've got the handles on there, or you can just drop them in a bucket and they're perfect. You know, you can carry them around, very portable. That's the small one. And here we've got the larger bits bag, a real array of different tackle in there for those of you who want to carry a lot of gear. It will all fit in there lovely. And this barrow bag's got a lot of space, and they do recommend that everything's modular, so you can put these bits bags in the side pockets. I prefer to put all my other tackle items in there. I've got my funnel web in this little pocket at the front, my stows, my binoculars, they all fit in this one. In the side one, I've got hook baits, all different sizes, shapes and colours. And in the back, my Delkim cases, for when I'm not using them, go in there. Crusher fits in there perfect. I've got mainline dips, it all goes in there. I'm as messy as they get. And moving over to the cookware bag, have a look at this. I've got a spare canister in there. I've got my tracker stove with another canister already loaded onto it. And then some of the actual tracker cookware that they do, for those of you who like to make a bit of grub on the bank. All in all, a lovely bit of luggage that's going to last you a very long time.
And there he is, 20 pounds of glorious mirror carp, nailed on an IQ D-rig. So we're going to get him back and show you exactly how to tie it. The D-rig is a classic carp rig. It's been used for years and years. Gets its name from that fella on the back of the hook, the D that we've created for the bait to slide back and forth. And this is sort of a modern day version of that. This is done with fluorocarbon. This is the IQ2 material in 15 pounds breaking strain. Normally you'd fish a D-rig as a pop-up. I'm not doing it in this case. I'm fishing it as a slow sinking bottom bait, and that is for a very good reason. Mainly because the fish are going to be able to suck that in, the hook can catch hold, and then the bait will slide back out of the way. Yeah, so it's not an anti-eject rig. People think that goes in, it'll never come back out again. I don't believe that at all. But if the hook finds purchase, then it tries to eject everything, the bait will continue to slide backwards and forwards on there. The other thing I really like about it is the way this will sit on the bottom, the hook will sit flat and the bait will sit just above it like so. And what that basically does is it hides the hook. The bait is almost sitting on top of the hook, but because we've got that movement, as soon as it goes into the fish's mouth and goes to catch hold, the bait gets out of the way, the hook turns and you've got him. And then the material, particularly important for when I'm fishing at long range, that IQ2 in 15 pound is a reasonably stiff material, so it hardly ever tangles. If the rig's tangled, you're never going to get a bite, so that's very, very important in this range. So to talk to you about how to tie it, I start off by tying the top of the D there. So I'm basically tying my favourite whipping knot, make a big loop underneath the hook, but this time you have the hook turn around the other way, so the eye's facing out rather than the point facing out. Big loop underneath the hook, round once, round again with the front of the loop, but this time going down the hook, and just whip 4 or 5 times, pull the short tag end to tie in it all, and then you've basically got that knot tied on with a great big length of line coming off the hook. Then you put your micro rig swivel on. That's very important. I'll explain that why in a minute. That gets slid on, and then I tie a simple knotless knot around the eye of the hook, and then that basically traps everything and forms our D. And you can have that D nice and tight to the hook, or you can have quite a big D like I've got there, which gives you a fair bit of movement. And I still, even with this rig, I still want a bit of separation, a bit of space between the bait and the hook, just so the hook can catch hold. And then moving down the hook link, that little fella there, I've got a small sinker just with a bit of dark matter putty around it, and that's just to sink everything down on the bottom, make sure it's all lying flat. Now this fluorocarbon's very heavy, so it will sink on its own accord, but because it's quite stiff, if you've got something on the bottom and there's no putty, it can sit up like that. So by having a bit of putty, you're just guaranteeing that bit at the end is sat down on the bottom away from the fish. And of course, because it is fluorocarbon, it's very, very difficult for the fish to see. And then moving down to the other end of the hook link, I've got a simple 4-turn half blood knot there. The knot you use when you first started going fishing, very, very simple, through the link loop, around the hook link 4 times, back through the loop. And before you pull it tight, wet it and pull the tag end tight first. And that creates a little bit of space. So when you put your rig puller in there and pull it down, it doesn't kink the hook link and you get a perfect knot on there. And then moving back up to the attachment of the bait, that's really important. As I said, we've got a micro ring swivel on there. And what that basically does is allows the bait to spin without having to spin the hook. So the hook can turn, you see that? The hook can turn without the bait having to turn. So it turns and catches hold that little bit quicker, that little bit more aggressively. And to attach that bait, all I've done is gone through the eye of that micro rig swivel just with a bit of floss. And then I've gone through the bait with a baiting needle, pulled the floss back through, and then I've just done a succession of granny knots over the top of a hair stop to hold it in place, and then just burned it with a lighter, and there you go. We've got it exactly the right length. So just the bottom eye of that swivel's poking out the bottom of the bait, and that's going to go in the mouth easily and turn really easily. That's so important. Now I'll steam the whole lot to get it perfectly straight. As you can see, that's lovely and straight there. And then once that's done, I'll retain it in my rig safe. And this is really good for keeping the hook link perfectly straight in between fishing. So just hook that up there, put our little pin in. And if you're going to do them in advance, you don't even have to steam them with that, because they're under tension. That's holding that hook link perfectly straight the whole time. When you take it off, the hook link's perfectly straight. And if it kinks when you're fishing, then you can either put it back in there for a little while or steam it over the kettle again, and it'll be perfectly straight. So when it hits the bottom, it all lays out nice and flat. The fish sucks in the bait, the hook link's already straight, everything works properly, and bang, you've got him. So that's my version of the IQD rig. If you're a boilie angler, get on it.